The sky above the alien planet was dark and full of snow. Thick white clouds moved slowly, hiding the stars. The wind howled like a wild animal. Everything was cold. Everything was silent. Then, something broke the silence. A bright light shot through the clouds. It was a ship, burning and broken, falling fast from the sky. Pieces of metal flew behind it. Smoke followed it like a black tail. The ship crashed into the snowy ground with a loud explosion. Snow flew high into the air. Inside the crashed ship, one man was still alive. His name was Jason Reed, a human explorer from Earth. His mission was to scan unknown planets. He was not a soldier. He was not a hero. He was just a man who loved space and adventure. Now, he was trapped on a frozen world. Jason opened his eyes slowly. Blood ran down his forehead. The ship was dark and cold. Sparks flew from broken wires. His arm hurt, and his left leg was stuck under a metal panel. He gritted his teeth and pushed the panel away. Then, he pulled out his emergency kit and crawled outside. The wind hit his face like a slap. The cold went straight to his bones. He looked around. White, only white. Mountains of snow. No trees, no sun. Just ice, wind, and death. Jason knew he wouldn't survive long out here. He turned back to the ship. He had a shelter kit and some supplies. Maybe he could build a small camp. He pulled the heavy box out of the wreckage and started walking. Then, he saw something strange. Footprints. Small, light, and half covered by snow. They were not human. Jason stared at them. Could someone else be here? He whispered. He followed the prints slowly, holding a flare gun in one hand. The tracks led to a dip between two snow hills. The wind screamed louder now. Snow fell faster. Then he saw them. Two figures lying in the snow, not moving, covered in frost. They were small, like teenagers. Their skin was pale purple. Their hair was long and white, blowing in the wind. They wore strange silver clothes, almost torn apart. Jason ran to them. "Hey, can you hear me?" No answer. One of them had her eyes half open. The other was shaking. They were still alive, but just barely. Jason acted fast. He pulled out his emergency blanket and wrapped it around them. He took off his own coat and gave it to the weaker one. Then, he lifted both of them, one by one, and carried them back to the wrecked ship. It took all his strength. Inside the ship, he turned on the heat unit. It hummed softly. He laid the girls near it and used more blankets. Then he opened some heat packs and placed them around their hands and feet. Time passed. Jason watched them closely. He gave them a few sips of warm water. He didn't know if they could understand him. He didn't even know if they were friendly. But he knew one thing. No one deserved to die in the snow. Hours later, one of the girls moved. She blinked slowly and looked around. Her eyes were bright violet and full of confusion. Jason sat up. "You're awake. You're safe now." She stared at him. Her lips moved. Saved. Jason nodded. "Yes, you're going to be okay." The girl looked at her sister, then back at Jason. Her face changed. She looked afraid. Or maybe something else. She opened her mouth again and whispered a word Jason couldn't understand. Velakai. Then, she closed her eyes and fainted. Jason frowned. What did that mean? He checked both of them again. Their skin was warmer now. Their breathing was slow but steady. They were safe for now. He sat back, tired and cold. He looked out of the broken window. The storm was getting worse. Jason didn't know who these girls were. He didn't know what planet he had landed on. He didn't even know if rescue was coming. All he knew was that tonight, in the middle of nowhere, he was no longer alone. Next morning, Jason opened his eyes. The fire was low. The heat pack had stopped working. He quickly looked over at the two girls. They were gone. He jumped to his feet and looked outside the wreckage. The snow was fresh, but not untouched. There were footprints again, 2 sets leading away from the camp. But then he noticed something strange. The prints didn't lead away. They led toward him. Jason turned slowly. The two alien girls were standing silently inside the doorway, staring at him. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were glowing. Snow swirled around the broken ship as the two alien sisters stepped closer without sound. Their silver clothes fluttering like feathers in the wind, their eyes glowing softly like twin moons in the dark. Jason didn't move. He felt like he was in a dream or a nightmare or something. Between both, he had saved them from death just hours ago, and now they stood there like ghosts, not frozen, not weak, just watching him. One of them took a step forward, her violet eyes never blinking. She had long, white hair that moved like silk. Her skin was smooth and pale purple, almost glowing under the dull light of the broken ship. She raised a hand slowly and pointed at Jason, her voice soft but clear like wind in a cave. "You are the one." Jason blinked. "What do you mean?" The other sister stepped forward. She looked younger, or maybe just quieter. She walked with her head low, but her eyes kept glancing at him, careful, alert. The first sister spoke again, her words strange but understandable. "You saved our lives. We belong to you now." Jason's mouth opened, but no words came. She stepped closer, her hand still raised, not to harm him, not to attack, just to touch gently. Her fingers brushed his chest, and she whispered softly, "Life bond is sealed. You are chosen." Now Jason took a step back. "Wait, hold on. Chosen for what? I don't understand. I only helped you. I didn't want anything in return." Girls looked at each other, then back at him. The second sister finally spoke, her voice thinner but warm. "In our world, the one who saves a royal life becomes part of it forever. It is sacred rule. You have saved two now. The bond is double." Jason ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't sign up for this." The first sister tilted her head. "What does sign up mean?" He sighed. "It means I didn't plan this. I was just trying to survive and help you." Second girl walked slowly to the heater and crouched down, her hands near the warmth. She looked tired again, and Jason could tell their strength was not fully back. Yet he knelt beside her, offering a protein bar from his pack. She sniffed it, then took a bite carefully, slowly, and her face showed something like delight, maybe. They had not eaten in days. Jason looked at the first girl. "What are your names?" She paused, as if choosing carefully. "I am Lyra," she said, then pointed to the other. "This is Essay. We are daughters of the High House from the Sky City of Illyria." Lyra. Jason repeated, "Never heard of it. You should not have." She said, "It is forbidden for outsiders to know about us. We were never meant to meet humans. So why are you here?" Lyra's face darkened. "We were taken. We escaped from who?" Before she could answer, a strange noise filled the air outside, a low hum like a distant machine. Say stood up faster, eyes wide. "They found us," she said in panic. Lyra grabbed Jason's arm. "We must hide now." Jason rushed to the edge of the ship and looked through the cracked window outside. The snow was shifting. Something was moving fast, not walking, not flying, something hovering just above the ground. Then he saw it, a black shape gliding above the snow, a machine with glowing red eyes like a hunter. No legs, no wings, just floating and scanning the area. Jason pulled them both down behind the wreckage. "Turn off the heater." Now the warmth faded. Instantly cold rushed in, but they stayed still, quiet. Jason held his breath. The machine came closer and closer, then paused right above the ship. Jason heard it clicking, scanning, analyzing. Lyra whispered in fear, "That is a sky drone. They belong to the Warden Lords. They are not here to rescue. They are here to return us, return you to what?" She looked into his eyes. "To the prison they call Research Lab." The drone suddenly shifted and flew past, slowly disappearing into the snowstorm. Jason stood up. "We can't stay here." Lyra nodded. "No, we will be hunted until we are caught or gone." Jason grabbed his gear and started packing. "I don't know this planet. I don't know where to go, but if they're after you, they're after me now too." Lyra looked at him seriously. "Why do you help us? You are not bound by our law, yet you protect us." Jason stopped and looked at her. "Because no one helped me when I crashed here. Maybe I know how it feels to be alone and scared and frozen. Maybe I don't need a reason." Essay touched his hand. "Thank you, human." Jason gave a weak smile. "My name is Jason. Remember it in case I don't make it." Lyra and Sai looked at him silently, then nodded. They stepped out into the snow again, moving fast, heading toward the distant mountains. Lyra led the way, her eyes scanning the horizon. Ace followed quietly, her hand never far from Jason's bend. Then the wrecked ship stood alone now, just another broken thing in the cold wind and falling snow, but deep inside something new had started, not just survival, not just escape, something ancient, something binding, something that could change their worlds forever. White wind screamed across the frozen hills, carrying the smell of fire and fear, as Jason, Lyra, and Sai moved quickly through the deep snow, their footprints vanishing behind them, as if the planet itself wanted to erase their trail. No one spoke, only the cold howled around them, and somewhere in the distance the low humming sound of the drone still echoed like a whisper that refused to die. Lyra led the way, her eyes glowing faintly, as if guiding them toward something only she could see. Her body moved with purpose, but her face was tight with worry. Ace stayed close to Jason, one hand always brushing against his jacket, not for warmth, but for comfort. Her face was pale, and her lips trembled from both cold and fear. Jason held a broken scanner in his hand, trying to read the area, but the device only blinked red lines and static. He had never seen this kind of interference before. It felt like the planet itself didn't want him to know what was coming. "We are being followed," Lyra finally said. Jason didn't ask how she knew. He had already learned. She could sense things before they happened. Maybe it was her blood, maybe it was her training, or maybe it was something stranger. "How many?" he asked. "3 machines, maybe more," she replied. "They are not drones anymore. They changed them. They became something else." Jason glanced at her. "What do you mean?" Lyra stopped walking and turned her head. Slowly, listen. Far behind them, the snow shook, not like wind, not like a small creature. Something big was moving below the ice, something crawling, something alive and wrong. Jason's heart pounded. He looked at Sai, who was now staring into the dark snowstorm, eyes wide, her hands shaking. "They used beasts," Lyra said, her voice low and full of old pain. "Creatures from old wars, now part machine, part living. They smell us, they feel our warmth, and they never stop hunting." Jason cursed under his breath. "We need shelter now." Lyra pointed to a crack in the rocks nearby, a narrow cave almost hidden behind a wall of frozen stone. "We go there. It's small but safe." The 3 ran toward the cave, the snow pulling at their legs as if it wanted to keep them out. Jason reached it first and helped Sa inside. Then Lyra followed, just as the ground behind them cracked open with a loud cracking sound. Something huge burst through the snow. It looked like a wolf, but 10 times bigger. Metal plates covered its back, its eyes burned red, and its teeth were made of sharp steel wires. It growled like a broken engine, grabbed his flare gun, aimed it quickly, and fired a blast of white light, hit the creature in the face. It screamed, a sound so high and strange it made Jason fall back, his ears ringing. The beast stumbled, but didn't fall. Instead, it opened its mouth and let out a howl that echoed across the snowy sky, and from far away, 2 more howls answered. "They are calling each other," Lyra said quickly. "We must blot the entrance now." Jason and Lyra pushed rock, snow, and pieces of old ice over the entrance, sealing them inside the narrow cave, just in time before another beast jumped toward them and smashed into the wall with a loud crash. The cave shook but held inside. It was cold, but safer. They crouched close to each other in the dark, breathing hard. Jason lit a small light and looked around. The walls of the cave were smooth and strange, like glass, not natural, not human. "What is this place?" he asked. Lyra touched the wall. "This is old technology from before our people fell. This cave is not a cave. It is a shell, a broken ship, maybe part of something greater once long ago." Jason moved his hand over the wall, and suddenly it lit up, faint symbols glowing beneath his fingers. He saw stars and shapes. Maps maybe, or warnings. One of the lights blinked faster, showing a familiar shape. Earth. Jason leaned closer. It showed Earth circled in red, then a line drawn from Earth through a distant star marked with a strange symbol. "What is this, Lyra?" he asked. Again she looked at it, her face pale. "That is your world. And that symbol, it means target, target." Jason repeated, confused. "Are you saying Earth is marked for something?" Lyra nodded slowly, and Sae whispered from the corner, "They plan to take more, not just us, not just Illyri. Your world is next." Jason felt cold. Inside a new kind of cold, not from the snow, not from the storm, but from truth, something deep and terrifying. They sat in silence. Outside, the beasts still waited, their red eyes glowing through cracks in the rocks, their claws scratching at the frozen stone. Inside the forgotten cave, old secrets glowed on ancient walls while three lives sat close together. One human, two alien, and the cold between them, no longer just weather but war waiting to begin. Jason looked at Lyra and Zay and made a quiet promise in his mind. He didn't know what was coming, but he would fight it. Ice cracked under Jason's boots as he followed Lyra through the frozen tunnels lit only by glowing blue crystals that pulsed like quiet hearts buried deep beneath the snow. A virally behind them, as they moved in silence, her steps careful, her face pale, but her eyes alert, watching every shadow, every sound, every sudden whisper of wind in the stone. None of them spoke, not even Jason, who usually had a question for everything. Now he only listened to the strange hum in the walls. A low vibration, like the heartbeat of something old, something alive, something not built by human hands. Where are we? Jason finally asked after walking what felt like hours. Lyra turned her head and answered with one soft word: below. Below what? He asked again. Below memory, she said. Below maps, below the reach of machines or drones or sky beasts. This place was built by the ones who came before us, the ones who disappeared into silence. Jason looked around. The tunnel felt warmer somehow, as if it protected them not just from the cold, but from time itself. The walls were not just rock, they were shaped, curved like ship parts, smooth and strange, yet somehow familiar. We are close, Essay whispered. And the sound of her voice sent a chill through Jason, not because of fear, but because of what came next day. Soft knock echoed ahead, then a door opened by itself. No handle, no lock, just light sliding apart like curtains. Made of glass. Inside stood a tall figure cloaked in silver and frost. His skin was a pale blue, his eyes hidden behind a mask carved with ancient symbols. His voice when he spoke was deep like thunder rolling beneath a frozen lake. Welcome, Jason Reed. I have been waiting. Jason stepped back. How do you know my name? The figure laughed, not cruel, not kind, just full of old knowledge. Because the stars told me, and the girl you saved carries the mark of the lost crown. Jason looked at Lyra, who stood still, her face unreadable. What is he talking about? Lyra lowered her head. This is the Ice King, the last keeper of the old line, the guardian of forbidden knowledge. He knows things no one should know. The Ice King nodded and walked slowly toward Jason, each step leaving frost behind. I know your crash was not an accident. I know the sisters were not meant to live, and I know you carry something that could change everything. I don't carry anything, Jason said, only confusion and a backpack. The king laughed again. Maybe that is enough. Maybe that is all the universe needs, sometimes a moment of mercy, a broken ship and a human heart. Jason stared at him, trying to make sense of the words and failings. Stepped forward and bowed slightly. We seek passage to the outer zones. We cannot stay here. They will find us again. The king nodded. I can help, but nothing comes free, not even under the snow. What do you want? Jason asked, his voice careful. I want a promise, the king said. I want you to take the sisters to the last gate, and I want you to tell the Council of Terra that war is already here. It wears masks, it rides on machines, and it uses peace as a trap. Lyra stepped closer. What gate do you mean? The king turned and raised his hand. A section of the wall lit up, showing a map. Spinning star marked in red lines, leading to a broken planet on the edge of the galaxy. That is the gate, the final jump point. If you reach it, the girls will be safe, and the warning will live. Jason stared at the map, his head full of questions and fear, but something inside him said yes before he could think. Too long. Will go, he said. King nodded and handed him a small cube. Take this, it will guide you and protect you, but it only works with a clear heart. Lie to it, and it will turn to dust. Jason held the cube, feeling its strange warmth in his hand. Lyra looked at him, her eyes softer than before. You could have left us many times. Why do you stay? Jason smiled weakly. Maybe I want to finish something I didn't start. Maybe I'm tired of running from things I don't understand. Zay touched his arm, and for a moment, Jason felt something like peace, like home, even here in a place without sun. The king stepped back. The sky beasts Cannot follow underground, but they wait above take. The southern shaft it leads to an old hangar. There is a ship there. If it still works, it will fly only once. Make it count. They turned to leave, but before they did the king said one last thing. If you love them, choose one. Hearts shared too long become broken blades. Jason didn't answer, not with words, only with a quiet nod as he led the sisters deeper into the ancient halls of ice, toward the hangar, and toward whatever came next. Frost clung to the walls like old skin peeling from bones, as Jason, Lyra, and Say stepped into the hidden hangar, their breaths rising like ghosts in the frozen air, their eyes locked on the massive shadow resting in the center of the ancient chamber. Ship was shaped like a claw, curved and sharp and broken in places, with wings that folded inward like arms wrapped around a secret. It looked like it hadn't flown in 100 years, maybe more, but something about it still felt alive. Jason walked forward slowly, his boots echoing against the icy floor, his eyes scanning the control panels and cracked glass with a mechanic's hope and a survivor's fear. Will it fly, he asked. Only once, Lyra said, her voice quiet, only far enough if the winds allow. It was built for speed, not return. Jason touched the side of the ship, and the metal warmed under his hand. Lights flickered inside, systems humming as if waking from sleep. Sensors blinked red, then orange, then soft blue. It knows you, Say whispered, her voice almost a prayer. Jason climbed inside the cockpit, checking the old controls, and the rusted interface dust covered everything, but under it he saw Earth's alphabet mixed with alien script, maybe once built by human hands, then stolen or modified by others. I can work with this, he said. Maybe. We do not have maybe, Lyra said. We have minutes. From the far end of the hangar a siren cried out, a low howl that rose through the walls and echoed through the frozen tunnels. They had been found. Again, Jason shouted, get in now. Lyra and Cesare jumped aboard. As Jason flipped switches, lights roared to life, engines shook. The walls in the ship began to rise slowly, like a bird pulling itself out of a grave. The doors above them began to open wide. Stone walls pulling apart, snow and wind rushing in and from the opening. Sky above, something dark and burning was falling fast. Sky drones, at least 4, maybe 5, dropping like spears. Red lights, glowing claws extended, sharp and hungry. Jason pushed the throttle. The ship groaned, but obeyed. Engines screamed, and the floor below cracked as they rose into the air. Just as the first drone fired a blast of red plasma across the hangar, SA screamed, and Jason jerked the ship sideways. The beam missed by inches, cutting through ancient steel and melting a wall into glowing ash. Hold on, Jason shouted as the ship burst through the hangar roof into open air, snow and wind slamming into them like fists from every side. Drones followed one after another, flying with metal wings and spinning blades. They screamed as they closed in, firing sharp blue bolts that lit the sky like lightning. Jason dodged right, then rolled hard left, the sisters gripping their seats as the ship spun between 2 ice pillars. The engines roared louder than the storm. One drone came too close, and Lyra stood fast, eyes glowing white, as she raised her hand and released a pulse of power that cracked the air. The drone exploded into fire and fell spinning into the snow below, but the blast drained her. She dropped to her knees, breathing hard. Jason reached back. Zoe, help her. Zoe held her sister close, eyes wet, her voice shaking. We have to survive. The ship's warning light flashed low. Fuel. The engine was burning faster than expected. Too many turns, too much speed, not enough time. Where's the gate? Jason shouted over the noisy Say pointed southwest, a valley past the cliffs hidden under the snow. Old structure with gold lights. The jump beacon is buried, but still alive. Jason nodded and turned the ship hard, heading toward the valley as 2 more drones locked in behind them. One fired a net weapon, a glowing net meant to trap them in midair. Jason saw it coming and pulled up fast, the ship climbing like a bullet. The net passed under, but one drone didn't miss a shot. A bolt hit the back wing, sparks flew, and warning lights screamed. Engine pressure dropping, system failure seconds away. We won't make it like this, Jason thought, unless something changes now. He looked at the cube the Ice King gave him. It still glowed faintly blue. He grabbed it, pressed it against the console, and whispered, "If you ever wanted to help someone, help us now." The cube pulsed, then vanished into the system. The ship suddenly surged forward. Lights growing brighter, controls, sharper speed, increasing like the engines had been fed fire from the stars. Jason shouted one more time. They reached the valley, breaking through low clouds, and below the snow parted, revealing a ring of gold. Light buried in the ice, the jump beacon glowing faint but real. Jason aligned the ship with the ring and hit the final key behind them. The last drone launched a final shot, a fire beam, aimed straight for the engines. Jason saw it coming and did the only thing he could. He turned the ship sideways, using the already broken wing to block the blast. The wing exploded, but the ship kept moving into the light, into the beacon, into escape. As the world turned white around them, Jason heard Lyra call his name, but everything else went quiet. He had no idea where they were going, but they were free for now. White light poured around the ship as it spun through the beacon tunnel, its damaged wing cracking, its engines screaming, while Jason gripped the controls with both hands, his knuckles white, his eyes locked on the stars ahead. Behind him, Lyra held her sister. Issei closed, both of them breathing hard, their faces pale, their bodies shaking from the escape from the near-death flight and the fear of what might come next. Then silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of space, empty, endless, cold. The ship had jumped, but it had not arrived. Jason looked at the dashboard. The coordinates were gone. The map was blank. The beacon had taken them somewhere far away, maybe off course, maybe off time. "Where are we?" Say asked, her voice barely more than air. Jason checked the readings. "I don't know. This isn't Earth. This isn't Olire. This is somewhere new." The ship drifted toward a small moon orbiting a dead planet, its surface gray and cracked like an ancient skull, scattered with ruins and glowing towers that blinked in rhythm like a dying heartbeat. "We need to land," Jason said. "This thing won't fly again." Lyra looked at the ruins below, then nodded. "Land, but stay ready. This place is not sleeping, it is watching." Ship touched down on the dusty surface, engines failing with a heavy groan, smoke curling up from the back wing. Jason helped Issei out of her seat and then supported Lyra, who was still weak from her earlier power surge. The air was thin but breathable, the gravity heavy but manageable, and around them stood the towers, silent, tall, broken, as if waiting for something or someone. Jason looked up at one tower. It blinked once, then stopped. "That's not creepy at all," he said, mostly to himself. Then came the voice, low, mechanical, slow and cold, like something dead trying to speak again. It echoed across the ruins. "Identify." Jason looked around. "Who said that?" Lyra stepped forward. "Ancient guardian." She said, "This is a test moon built by the old council to judge the worthy. Those who reach it must answer the beacon's final question." Voice returned, louder, this time stronger. "You carry the mark of royal blood and the life of a planet. What will you give to pass?" Jason frowned. "We don't have anything left." "You have choice," the voice said. "One may stay, one may go. Choose or be removed." Yes. Gasped. "They want to separate us." Lyra looked at Jason, her eyes calm but sad. "This is the law of the beacon. Only those with pure choice may pass. If we both go without choice, the beacon will fail, and we will be lost." Jason shook his head. "No, I won't choose between you. Must," Lyra said, "or we all stay here forever. This is how the old stars test hearts. Not with war, but with weight." Jason felt sick, the air suddenly thicker, the ruins glowing around him, like they were alive, watching, judging. "Say, step forward." "I will stay." "You take Lyra." Lyra grabbed her arm. "No, I stay." "You and Jason go." Jason shouted, "Stop. No one's staying. We're going together." Then the voice returned, final warning. "Make the choice or all shall fall." Towers began to crack, light pouring from them, the ground shaking, the air humming like a blade being drawn. Jason turned to them, both eyes burning. "This isn't fair. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this bond, this fate, this test." But still he knew, still he felt it deep inside. That one word kept burning in his chest: choice. He looked at Lyra, then at Issei, one strong, one soft, both brave, both broken, both willing to give everything, and yet he saw something he had not seen before. Lyra was watching him with love but also with duty, her heart tied to her people, her crown, her mission. Say was looking at him not with fear, but with belief, not with need, but with trust, not because he saved her, but because he stayed. Jason took a breath, stepped toward Issei, and reached for her handi. Choose. Ssy, he said quietly. The ruins stopped shaking, the light faded, the towers went still. The air softened, and the voice returned. Choice received, the bond is sealed. Lyra smiled, tears in her eyes, and nodded. I knew you would. Zessa stared at Jason, not saying anything, just holding his hand tighter than ever, her eyes wide with feeling too big for words. Then a beam of light surrounded them, and the ruins faded into stars. The ground dissolved, and the ship was whole again, floating in a sky made of memories and engines roaring back to life. They had passed. Jason turned to say, she looked at him with wonder, her voice finally strong again. You chose me. He smiled. I think you chose me first. Lyra stood near the console, her hand glowing. She had given part of her power to repair the ship, her last gift before the path separated. I will find you again, she said softly, and vanished into the light. Jason and Zay watched as space bent around them, and the stars changed direction, pulling them toward something new, something final, something that would end or begin it all. Stars flowed past the ship like falling snow in a dream, endless lights swirling through the windows as Jason sat beside Tsatsi, her hand still wrapped in his, like it belonged there, like it had always belonged there. He didn't speak. She didn't need him to. They had passed the test. They had survived machines, beasts, storms, betrayal, and choices no one should ever have to make, and now they moved through the last gate, guided by the cube's soft glow and the promise of a safe place somewhere just beyond the edge of everything. Jason looked at Say, her face lit by the blue pulse of the cube, her eyes half closed, her breathing calm at last, not from fear or exhaustion, but from peace. You okay? He asked gently. Say nodded slowly. Yes, just warm finally. Warm, he smiled and leaned back into the seat, his muscles still sore, his mind still running over everything they'd been through. The crash, the ice, the drones, the cave, the Ice King, the flight, the choice, the light, and now here they were, two lives, drifting across stars on a ship built by forgotten hands, held together by nothing more than hope and a heartbeat. Then the ship's console blinked green, and the screen lit up with a name, Haven. Jason read the word aloud. Haven? What is that? Ase opened her eyes, her voice soft. A sanctuary built long ago by those who fled the wars, where no empire can enter, where no machines can scan, no weapons can fire, a place where peace is still real. The ship slowed near a small planet covered in green rings and floating silver cities hidden in clouds that shimmered like water. The docking beacon blinked once, then opened a path, and the ship slid into the light. Jason held S's hand tighter, ready for anything, ready for nothing. They landed in silence on a glass platform surrounded by soft trees that moved like they were alive, leaves glowing gently in colors. Jason had never seen colors without names, colors that felt like music. A woman stood waiting, dressed in long white robes, her face kind, her eyes gold. She bowed slightly as they stepped out. Welcome, Jason Reed and Azea Valire. You are safe now. Jason blinked. You know us. The woman smiled. The stars whisper, and Haven listens. They followed her into a large crystal hall filled with warm light and soft air. Jason looked around. No guards, no weapons, no warnings, just people walking slowly, speaking softly, even laughing like life had remembered how to be simple again. The woman brought them to a room wide open, with windows showing the stars, a soft bed, fresh clothes, and warm food already waiting. May rest, she said. The future waits, but not tonight. Then she left. Jason stood at the window, watching the sky, watching the stars, trying to believe this was real. Say walked up behind him, stood beside him, not touching, just standing close. Do you miss Earth? She asked. Sometimes, he said, but maybe I was always meant to leave it. And do you miss her? She asked carefully, meaning Lyra. Jason didn't answer for a moment. He stared at the stars, then turned to Sai. She was my beginning, but you are mine now. Sa looked down, a small smile hiding in her lips, her voice shaking. I thought maybe you only chose me because you had to. He took her hand again. No, I chose you because when everything was Falling apart, you held on, you stayed kind, you stayed human, even when I was losing mine. She looked at him, her eyes full and wet, and he kissed her soft like snow, like memory, like starting. Again outside the stars kept moving, and Haven glowed like a living song. Peace had finally come, not forever, but for now. Later that night, Jason sat alone for a while, looking at the cube still glowing beside the bed, not pulsing anymore, just steady, like it was watching, like it was waiting. Wondered if Lyra was safe, if the Ice King still guarded the frost, if Earth would ever know what nearly happened and what had been saved by a crash, a choice, and a strange kind of love. But most of all, he thought of the future, not the big kind, not galaxies or empires. Just quiet ones, mornings with no fear, nights without alarms, a voice beside him that said his name like it meant something. S.A. stirred behind him, murmured his name, and smiled in her sleep. Jason lay beside her, watched her breathe, and for the first time since the crash, since the storm, since the ruins and the chase, he let his eyes close with no fear of what tomorrow would bring, because tomorrow would come, and he was no longer alone.